but it's an injury to the foot. It's a problem with his foot. Yet he was somehow able to outrun the Secret Service agents. Something tells me that those Secret Service agents need some PT. They need to hit the track. They need to go report to their drill sergeant and get put through basic training again so they remember what fitness is. Maybe they need to sit back and read, a fitness manual and actually do something. Because if they're being outrun by a disabled veteran who has a physical injury to his foot, then you're a sorry sack of special Secret Service presidential detail person. Perhaps you need to be replaced with somebody a little bit more competent and capable. Like a veteran. I know of a guy who's a U.S. Army Ranger who happens to be an amputee, who would probably do a better job in the Secret Service than the guys who fail to catch up with the guy with the messed up foot. By the way, this Ranger is currently an active duty U.S. Army Ranger with a prosthetic. He still jumps out of airplanes. He still rappels. He still runs every day with his unit. He acts as though he's never been injured, although one of his legs is evidently not flesh and bone anymore. So, not exactly your normal person, but then again, he's got a prosthetic leg and he'd do a better job and he's more physically fit and capable than the people guarding the president. That is flippin' scary. Just going to toss that one out there. So, we could sit here and laugh and chuckle at the hypocrisy of the left and the lapse in paying attention to what's going on with the Secret Service on Friday. But we have other things to discuss. Without further ado, folks, let's hear from good old Eleanor.
You don't have a right to know everything in a separation of powers government, my friend. That is the difference between a parliamentary government and a separation of powers government.
Yeah. Sunlight time! So, Eleanor, got a few things to make you feel bad about, because I'm going to sit here and expose some things, talk about some things. Folks, so if you go over, it's all over just about every news source out there. And if you look at the program notes, I have one article by BuzzFeed and another from the New York Times up there just to start off the program notes. And, of course, this leads into other stories I've got sitting up there. But the biggest news is kaboom! Well, most news sources are stating that the Air Force has done most of the work and has hit targets throughout Syria and some parts of Iraq, hitting command and control centers for the Islamic State group. They're that arm of Al-Qaeda that supposedly has since split. Yeah, right. Yeah, keep telling that lie. Someday somebody will actually believe you. But anyway, the thing is, it wasn't only Air Force. The Navy Marine pilots were doing actions in there as well. But the majority of the strikes were actually done by what's called a TLAM, which is a Tomahawk missile. And the Tomahawks come from Navy ships. And in fact, they were fired from two different Navy ships. One, I think, was the Arleigh Burke, and I'm not sure what the other one was. Anyway, 47 total Tomahawk missiles. And that's a lot, folks. But 47 of them were fired at various suspected command and control nodes for the Islamic State, kind of disrupting their ability, or if they were command and control nodes, and if our intelligence people were on the ball like they were back when I was actively involved in that arena, and if Obama didn't sit there and delay decisions for a month, giving them time to move prior to the strikes actually happening, if they happened with timely actionable intelligence and they were still on site, this would cause a severe disruption in their activities and capabilities. But it'd be temporary. Give them a couple of weeks, they'll be back up and running just as well as they were, if not worse, because now you've blown up those locations. We have no troops on the ground to exploit those locations. And by exploit, we mean investigate, look for clues and details. So we have no idea where they may have gone to. I mean, there's certain ways we can get hints, but it's not as good, it's not as corroborated as if we had actual people on the ground to go through those sites after they were bombed and look for clues, look for computer hard drives or cell phones or satellite phones that were not destroyed or not completely destroyed, that we could go and extract information and data from and then compile it and analyze it and go forward. So, or any documentation or anything else that may have been there. So when you sit there and do strikes like this, yeah, it sounds all great and wonderful, but what's not happening, what you need the ground forces for is to sift through that stuff. Also to hold the terrain to make sure they don't come back. And, if you're smart about it, to kind of start the rebuilding process, because you might blow these buildings up. Well, somebody else could live there. Somebody good could live there. So you want to build it back up and give it a place for somebody to live. But anyway, 47 Tomahawk missiles. But still, no ground troops to do what needs to be done with ground troops. So go ahead and look over. BuzzPo has an article there, airstrikes with video showing how showing some of the strikes going on there. And then the New York Times also has a story up about the targets that were hit in the Syria area. Now, on the flip side, the ISI, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or Iraq and the Levant, they've had said their own successes. Saqualiya, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, because if not, I mispronounced it my entire time that I was in Iraq. But let me actually look and see if I can phonetically say this again to make sure I'm not screwing it up completely here, folks. But, yeah, Saqualiya. It's a little town, a little bit closer to Fallujah, just west of Fallujah, but between Fallujah and Ramadi, just south of Lake Tharthar. And for those who have ever been in Iraq, you know exactly where I'm talking about. It's along the Euphrates River. It was one of the at one time it was one of the key, supposed to be strongholds for some of the Iraqi army. I was going to say I thought that was the Field Artillery College, but it's not. The Field Artillery College is actually east of Fallujah, a little bit closer to Baghdad. But I think there's a rocket development site near Saqualiya, because I know near Lake Tharthar they had a testing range as well. So Saqualiya was eventually taken over. It was established as a first we had some of our forces there with a small FOB, and then it was handed over to the Iraqis and rebuilt into one of their Iraqi army bases for the new Iraqi army, the ones that are supposed to be the good guys. And it's a little bit over 25 miles, maybe closer to like 30 or 40 miles west of Baghdad. Well, ISI forces, they had been, well, first of all, the Iraqi army there had been a little bit cut off. They had some logistical problems because some of their supply routes, their logistical routes, what we call lines of communication, had been severed, had been cut, had been blocked off by ISI. And they also had been under a little bit of siege, undergoing some attacks here and there. So they needed more ammo, more food, more water, and other supplies. Well, they saw a whole bunch of up-armored Humvees that matched the ones that they weren't as good as what the U.S. forces rolled in. They were a couple of generations earlier in their armor kits, but they were up-armored Humvees. And they saw them rolling up to their FOB, to their base there. And they were starting to cheer, thinking, hey, reinforcements were coming, and they were bringing supplies with them. Cool. So they opened the gates, and immediately came under attack from ISI, who had captured this equipment and was now using it to do a Trojan horse type operation and get inside. And from what I've gotten, it's from several sources, including one here from the Washington Post, which I'm looking at now. But all of my sources say about the same thing: is there were anywhere from 8 to 10 survivors. So, 3 of them were commissioned officers, and they're all saying pretty much the same thing. Hundreds, if not of those that they didn't witness killed, there's hundreds that they're not sure what happened. The people are missing, presumed either captured or dead. Soldiers, Iraqi army soldiers. So an entire garrison has been compromised, gone, turned over, defeated, with anywhere from 8 to 10 survivors, and that's it. The rest are either dead or will be soon. So that's how bad things are. So while we're sitting there firing TLAMs at ones in Syria, the country that we abandoned because we never finished the mission there. We pulled out before we completed the mission of getting them stood up and ready to take care of themselves. So now they're falling even more. And just a note on that one, I just want to mention one little thing to any member of the federal government who is listening to this broadcast, or the no such agency fools that are listening to this, to listen for this so-called unpatriotic rhetoric. First of all, guys, over in no such agency, I'm as much as a patriot as you, if not more so. I served 24 years, and I did your job, among others. And I've kept those things that I'm supposed to not talk about. I don't. So kiss my left knee and lick my right patella. But just for your bosses, my former boss, who has proven himself a complete and utter idiot, and the people who sit there and do what he says without telling him he's a complete and utter idiot, are a bunch of brown-nosing chicken poops. Well, I have this to say to all those idiots. I told you so! I was saying it back in 2009 when I was on a transition team in Iraq, and I said it in 2010 right after I got home. They aren't ready. How long we were in Germany supporting their military, helping to train them and get better and able to defend their own borders until we pulled out of Germany. Hit! We're still there! So, a little bit of perspective, folks. And Germany has been capable of protecting their own borders without needing us there since probably the late 90s. In complete reality. We left there in the mid-90s. Our large presence in Berlin, but we still maintain a military presence. And I was stationed in Germany again in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they still counted on us to help train with them and share with them, etc. So we're still there. Why did we pull out of Iraq and leave them? And they were nowhere near ready. They talk about the money spent. That money ended up wasted because they didn't let the people who were there finish the job of doing what needed to be done in training them up and ensuring their security and safety in the meantime. So I blame the decision makers for making the dumb decision in pulling us out early and lying to the public and claiming that Iraq was a lot better off than it was, including the higher-up yes men in leadership who just told the administration what they wanted to hear instead of telling them the truth. And yes, I will squarely put my fingers in their chest. I don't care what your rank is. I'm retired now. I can say this without worrying about retribution, because what are you going to do to me? Except cry, because this former senior NCO has just outed you for the complete and utter idiot and moron and yes man, backless, spineless jellyfish that you are, instead of being a soldier. What would Patton do? That is what you should ask with every decision you make. When you're faced with the political aspects of things, you need to turn around and you need to ask, what would Patton do? What would Chesty Puller do? Because they had candor. They had backbone. They knew what needed to be done. They knew it was morally correct, militarily correct, and they did it. And worried about the political consequences later, knowing full well that history would show that they made the right decision. So military leaders, and especially the senior leaders, who are too afraid of making that decision, afraid they're going to be forced into early retirement or whatever, you know, if you're not putting those stars or birds or oak leaves on the line, if you're not doing that on a regular basis to do what's right for the mission and your men or women, then you are not worth that paycheck and you need to be out. So that's my 2 cents from the military's perspective, folks. And I'm sure there's plenty out there who have served who are sitting there nodding and pumping their fists and going, yeah, you tell them. I'm right there with you. Because that's what it's all about, folks, when you serve. It's about the guy on your left, guy or gal on your left, guy or gal on your right. The ones out front that are looking and trying to see what's going on to report back to you and tell you, you know, what to expect that you're going to coming up on. In other words, your scouts and reconnaissance intelligence personnel. And there's people behind you who are making sure you have everything you need to do your job and to fight that fight. That's who it's about. It's not about the pole-smoking, choming jerks, power-hungry jerks in office who are worried more about their paycheck and the corruption they can cover up so they can get rich on our tax dollars. It ain't about them. It's about the U.S. Constitution, our way of life, and doing what needs to be done. So, again, this is another subject I can talk an entire hour on. I'm not going to bore you. You're tired of me talking about the military mistake there. But here's another mistake. Again, we're casting sunlight here, folks. Latest report indicates, and this kind of links into something I talked about yesterday with the problems with the Department of Homeland Security and their high turnover rate. They're not seeing this stuff because they have got nobody sitting in an office long enough to do a job. They keep rotating positions or quitting and moving to private companies where they actually are seeing what's going on. And, of course, because they're no longer working in the government office, nobody's listening to them as far as the government goes, but the people who know better are listening to them. Anyway, as many as 40 ISIS-linked, ISIS-affiliated, ISIS-allegiant U.S. citizens left the U.S., went and trained in how to do terrorist activities and got their marching orders from their ISIS brothers and sisters over in, you know, those countries that love those evil bastards. And they have since freely traveled back to the United States, where they're still U.S. citizens, and come back home. And there's as many as 4 of them back in the United States, back here, sitting back and waiting to strike and do whatever they're supposed to do for ISIS. 40. Might not sound like a large amount, but that's 10 cities with 4 terrorists in there. That's 10 cities with 2 suicide bombers and 2 support personnel. Think about it. If that's not scaring the crap out of you, well, I wouldn't get paranoid about it, folks. I would start picking up the phone and calling my congressmen and my senators and telling them to support Cruz's bill to revoke the U.S. citizenship of anybody who declares allegiance to a terrorist organization such as ISI or Al-Qaeda or Ansar al-Sunnah or Boko Haram or any of them, and leaves the United States. You leave the United States to go join them, that's okay, you're no longer a U.S. citizen. Don't bother coming back. Let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Whap. Gone. Bye. So, 40 of them, folks. And a recent video that came out, supposedly produced by ISIS, of course, flaps its gums and makes threats and tries to scare us, but it's narrated by somebody with a North American accent. So, thinking about that, are they preparing a major strike in either the U.S. or Canada? Or possibly even down south in Mexico? Any way, shape, or form, that's still North America. Anywhere between Mexico, U.S., or Canada, that's something to really consider. Of course,